Hello and welcome to the final Stay Kind conversation for 2021. I hope you're all well. My name is Jane Hutchin and I'm Stay Kind's journalist in residence. And I'm very happy tonight to be bringing on stage shortly, but not just yet, the wonderful Greg Page, who is, of course, Stay Kind ambassador and the original Yellow Wiggle. Yay! But before we get to Greg, I just want to point out a couple of things on the screen in front of you. You will probably see a tab that says chat. So, we'd love to hear from you. Say g'day. I don't know about you, but I've just had the most massive rain shower here. Tell me what the weather is like where you are and what you're hoping to hear from us. We're going to talk for about 30 minutes, and then towards 7:30 Eastern time, you can go towards the Q&A tab, which should be in front of you, and that's where you're going to put your questions in for Greg, and he will answer those for the remaining time, and we should finish up in about 45 minutes from now. So without further ado, I would like to bring the man who used to only wear yellow and who now wears a lot of black. He is the founder of Heart of the Nation, and we're going to hear all about that shortly. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Greg Page. Yay!
Hey, hi there.
I like the hands. Thank you very much. How are you?
Very well, thanks. How are you, Jane?
I'm very well indeed, and I think we've got heavy showers following all of us, but I know we're going to have a really happy and kind evening tonight, so we can hopefully hold the showers at bay.
Indeed, we will. Showers of happiness.
Showers of happiness, exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. Greg, I wonder, is kindness something that comes naturally to you?
Yeah, look, I think so. It's not something that I really have to think about in terms of, how can I be kind? Or I think there's always ways that you can be more kind to people.
Mhm.
But I think generally, I like to believe that humans are innately kind, that it's in all of us. And it's something that I just love going to the shops and smiling at people as you walk past them. It's just a nice thing to do. And I love that, because you don't know what's going on in somebody else's day. And you don't know if they've had a bad day or if they're having a good day. But sometimes just a smile is enough to, get that little smile back from them. And you just think, yeah, that's a nice little way to interact with somebody who you've never met before.
And have you always been like that, Greg, even when you were a kid, for example?
Yeah, look, I think so. Recalling my childhood, I remember having a very happy childhood, and always been that sort of person that looks for opportunities in life, opportunities to do things, and whether it's to make other people happy or to make yourself happy. And I think when we talk about kindness, I think it begins within. So making yourself happy is the very first step towards making other people happy, because when you're happy, you can be fulfilled and you can go out and you can let your light shine, and you can then shine that on other people and help them find their own light to shine.
We'll talk a little bit about the earlier part of your career a little later, if we get time to do that. But I wonder, you've had a few health struggles in your life. I think it would be fairly reasonable to say that. I'd like to talk about the one that occurred in January 2020, when you had what we would call a heart attack or a cardiac arrest at the end, or nearly at the end, of a concert, which was to raise funds for the bushfires. What do you remember of that event, Greg?
Well, it's funny. Waking up in hospital, I didn't remember anything that had gone on. And it was kind of weird being told by other people things that had happened. When I got out of hospital, I went home and I watched the recorded version of the live stream, because I couldn't quite comprehend the fact that they just happened to catch that moment where I collapsed. And I didn't actually believe that that was from that point in time. I thought it was from a different part of the show. When I went back and watched it, I didn't remember anything up until the point where, after I collapsed, as I was listening to what was happening, I could hear my breathing underneath. I think it was Murray who was talking at the time. And it was like this snoring sound. And that's what I heard. And as I heard that, I went back and listened again, because that triggered something in my mind. And what it triggered was the sound that I remembered sort of feeling within myself as I was taking what were going to be my last few breaths. And that was kind of confronting, but yeah, it was really a moment of great power, because it really drove home to me what could have been had a certain group of individuals not stepped up and done something, with the ultimate act of kindness to save a life. And that, yeah, I think about that often, really, that moment lying on the floor there, because it wasn't, at the time, it wasn't scary because I didn't know what was going on.
Right.
And I didn't know how bad things were, but I just remember lying there, and I do remember struggling to breathe. It was kind of an uncomfortable feeling, but it wasn't, as I said, it wasn't distressing in any way. And then just black. That's the last kind of thing I can remember. But the power of that moment, here 1 second, gone the next. But for the individuals who said, you know what, we need to do something to save this person's life, and they did. And it's not just my life that's been saved, it was my family's life as well, because I returned home to them. And tragically, for 90% of people that have a sudden cardiac arrest, they don't go home to their family. And that's just, that blows my mind to think that our survival rate in 21st century Australia is not higher than 10%.
And Greg, why is that? Because I know when we were speaking the other day, you told me, I think it was something like 27,500 Australians every year suffer a sudden cardiac arrest, which is astonishing.
Yeah, it's big numbers, right? And when you think about that, but factor into that too, that for 50% of those people, they have not been previously diagnosed with anything at all. And like myself, so I didn't know I had heart disease, and I dropped dead like that. And that's what happens for 50% of people that have a sudden cardiac arrest. So when you think about that, of that 27,000, that's 13,500 people that, without any warning whatsoever to them, their family, to anyone around them, for all intents and purposes, people could have looked at me and thought, gee, that guy's fit. He's just been jumping around on the stage. He's a bit out of breath, but hang on a second, what's happened here? Well, he's actually not with us anymore. So it's pretty scary when you think about that.
And tell us, what is it that actually, so you speak about a person who was thinking very quickly. I believe she was a nurse, and thankfully a Wiggles fan. And she got to you quickly, but what is the key thing about getting to someone who's had a heart attack?
Yeah, so when someone's in cardiac arrest, they're not responding and they're not breathing. So that's the key thing. So if you ever come across somebody who you can't wake up because, you shake them or you make loud noises and they're not responding, call 000 straight away and send for an AED or defibrillator at that point. If they're not breathing or not breathing normally or at all. So like I said, for me, I was making these snoring sounds. That's not normal. It's not normal to breathe like that. So if they're not breathing normally or at all, start CPR. And then once the AED gets there, use the AED to shock the patient. So call, push, shock. They're the 3 simple steps to save the life of someone who's in cardiac arrest.
Call, push, shock.
It's very simple, yeah. But it's so powerful. And for many, many people, of those 27,000 people, only 2% of people are fortunate enough to have the shock part of that equation, so the last link, in their chain of survival. So for me, to survive, I'm 1 in 10, but really to have that defibrillator there before an ambulance arrives, I'm really 1 in 50. So that's one reason why our survival rates are so low, because an AED or defibrillator has such a drastic impact on survival rates, but they're not used all that commonly out in the community. So we need to improve that.
So, Greg, when you woke up, and I think I remember seeing photos of you in hospital, and
the big thumbs up.
Yeah. I mean, how did you sort of, put all those pieces together and think about, how close it came to you not waking up in a hospital bed?
Look, waking up in hospital, I was still really still really recovering from the whole thing. And it took it took months really to recover, because when you're without oxygen for that amount of time, your brain is not functioning very well. And my wife was very worried that I was not going to recover fully, because for that first period of time in hospital, my memory was going, it was very short-term memory. And I couldn't remember things, from 1 second to the next. So I'd ask the same question over and over. But as I heard more and more about what happened, and I think that's why I went back to watch the show from the live stream, because I really couldn't believe what had happened. And I was still learning, and it was this long process, because even though I was there, I wasn't there. Like I was there, but I was not present, if you know what I mean. Like I had no idea what was going on. So to wake up and get all this information and try and piece it all together, it hit me when the nurse said to me when I was in hospital, he said, "You're a very lucky man. You're 1 in 10 to survive a cardiac arrest, and your ribs are going to be very sore from where they've done CPR on you." And that, when he said CPR, that's when it hit home first. After that, my brain was still trying to process everything. And then, it was a long period of time of just trying to piece it all together and come to a real deeper understanding of what had happened.
I've already told people about your story, since we had that chat the other day. And I sort of, the question that I think about most is, what does it feel like to know that you are a 1 in 10, that, it could have so easily been different. You could have been one of the 9. And, we always say, make the most of every moment of your life. But you would have a completely different understanding of that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I do. I don't know that there's anything wise that I can impart about that, but it's just an incredible feeling of gratefulness every day, because every day now is a bonus day. And, some people that survive cardiac arrests, they'll have their next birthday and they'll call it their rebirth day. Well, I call it a bonus birthday, because, I wasn't reborn. I've come out the other side of it with a lot of learning, and I'm still the same person that I was. But yeah, it's a bonus birthday. So every day I get with my family now is a bonus day, and I try to make the most of that. It's hard because at the moment I'm on a mission. I put a lot of time into my own charity, Heart of the Nation, and it does take a lot of time. And I think there's a sense of duty. I was going to say obligation, but I don't feel obliged to do it. I just feel that I need to do it because there are lives out there that are being lost every single day. I mean, there's around 60 people that die every day from a cardiac arrest. And I really, really believe that we can save, a good number of those people and have more people returning home to their families. So I kind of feel that I'm bound to do something about that. I can't just sit back idly and let other families be torn apart continually every day, when there's something that can be done.
Greg, let's go back a little bit. When you were a teenager, say a 16-year-old or something around that age, did you have big plans for your life?
Yep, I did. I always knew I wanted to work in the music industry.
Mm-hmm.
And this is going to sound strange, but I always felt drawn to the public eye. Right now, I had this fascination with celebrity. Like I always loved people that were famous. Like I always collected autographs, cricketers or whoever I could, but I loved cricket, so I collected cricketers' autographs. I was in awe of these people. They were my role models and my idols. So I loved that. So I was always drawn to that somehow in some way. Then I met the guys from the Cockroaches, Anthony and Jeff, who later became part of the Wiggles with me. And they were my band that I idolized as a teenager. And I loved their music. And to get to meet them was really eye-opening for me, because I realized that they were just normal people. They weren't the sort of celebrities that we kind of get exposed to through the media from Hollywood and those kinds of snobbish kind of people. They were just down-to-earth guys who, lived day to day, and they happen to play music at night time, and that's what they do for a living. And yeah, so it was a real fascination for me, the fact that you could actually do something that you love, make a living out of it, and please many, many people while you do that.
So, when you were looking at these everyday celebrities who weren't Kardashians, you wanted to be like them, to be out in the public eye?
No, it wasn't about being a public eye. It was about doing something that could,
Useful.
yeah, something that people enjoy. And so I think as we kind of step through from there, if I'm not going to jump too far ahead, that's really what was amazing about being in the Wiggles. It was the fact that the four of us guys could get up there and do what we loved doing, something that we felt really passionate about, but at the same time have this room or auditorium or arena full of people, thousands of kids and
Mm.
parents, all sharing this same experience of music and joy. And the energy in those rooms or auditoriums or arenas was just electric. And to be a part of that, I think, is what I experienced when I would watch the Cockroaches perform, because they were a very fun band. Their music was energized, it was upbeat. And that's what I loved experiencing as an audience member. So with the Wiggles, to be able to be on stage and provide that experience for other people, I think was really powerful for me personally, because I'd been the beneficiary of that in other ways before.
I guess when you think of the Wiggles, you don't imagine that backstage there's huge kind of drinking binges and all that. I'm presuming it was kind of, maybe I'm wrong, Greg. Maybe it wasn't nice and clean back there.
No, it was. Backstage it was. I can absolutely guarantee that.
But were there also, I mean, there must have been a lot of pressure for you to perform, and pressure also in terms of, that mega stardom, even if it was from people who were sort of this height and smaller.
There was, I wouldn't say it was pressure. I'd say
Hmm.
it was responsibility, because we were, our audience were children. We
Yeah.
needed to make sure that we were wholesome, and we were. I mean, we were pretty much what you saw with the Wiggles is what you got. Of course, I didn't drink for many, many years, so I didn't have to worry about going out and being spotted with a beer in the hand. Murray, on the other hand, he likes to drink, and that's fine. I mean, he's an adult, right? So he should be able to do that. But I remember there was one time he was out at a pub in Newtown somewhere around where he lives, and it was reported in the paper the next day, oh, Murray Wiggle was spotted with a beer at the pub. And it was like, yeah, well, you know what? He is an adult, So there were certain things that are typical or normal that an adult would do. Then there's things that probably would be judged a little bit differently by people. If you did those things, no, you shouldn't be doing those kinds of things as a Wiggle. But we didn't kind of engage in those activities anyway, so that wasn't a problem. But it was just more the sense of, there's all these children out there who love what we do. The pressure is to keep it fresh, keep it new, and don't let it ever get stale. That was probably the pressure that we felt the most.
Wow, that's a nice pressure to have in many ways.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it really was. I mean, we took it so seriously, what we did, but we never took ourselves seriously, or we tried not to. We tried not to believe all the hype in the media that we'd read from time to time about, how the Wiggles had made it big in the US. And I think that really helped keep us authentic, because we didn't let that lead us away from what our goals were. And our goals were always to create child-appropriate entertainment. And I think whenever we were doing something, we always had to fall back on that. That's our mission, that's our purpose. So what is it that's going to make child-appropriate entertainment? And that kept us focused and on the ground.
At one stage, Greg, you got quite ill and unwell, and it wasn't really known at first what was wrong with you, and you eventually had to step back from the Wiggles. Did that feel cruel, or did that feel, I need to do this?
Look, a little bit of both maybe, but it was more I need to do this. At the time I didn't know what was wrong. And, as much as I loved being in the Wiggles, my time had come. I had to make a decision, and that was the right decision to make at that time. And, one of the things that I firmly believe is, as hard as it is sometimes, you are exactly where you're meant to be at every moment of your life.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, everything happens for a reason,
Mm.
and you can't fight it because it is just meant to be. The more you fight it and try to resist it, the unhappier you get, and the more disgruntled you get, and the more your emotions take over and steer you away from being who you really are. And I think that's a big key in life, is to really try to manage those emotions by understanding that you are exactly where you're meant to be at every moment of your life.
That could be quite a difficult message for some people, I'd imagine.
It is.
Where did you kind of learn to be so? You seem quite spiritually wise. Where did that come from?
So at the time I left the Wiggles, I was going through a pretty tough time physically, but also emotionally. I was separated from my first wife, and I was really struggling with life and how to manage life, I guess. I was 34, I think, at the time, and I grew up really as a young man in the Wiggles. So that was my life. And I was really, I guess, learning about life still. And I had a great mentor at that point in time in my life who was a psychic medium, a guy by the name of John Edward, who was quite famous on TV from America. And he played a very big part in me understanding life a lot more. So I was raised as a Christian, believing in God and Jesus and that way of life. And I think at that point of time in my life, I was really questioning, how much is your life laid out for you and you're just on a path and that's just how it's meant to be. There's an element of that, I believe, in life. As I said, you are where you're meant to be at every moment of your life. But we have free will. We can change things. So we are meant to be here right now. Doesn't mean we're meant to be here tomorrow or the next day. We can change that through a number of powers that we have, our superpowers. The first one is choice. We can choose a lot of things in life. We can choose how we respond to things. We can choose how we accept things. And as you say, it ain't always easy to accept things that are going on in your life. And it's very, very difficult. It's very, and the fact that you accept that something is happening doesn't mean you have to be happy about it. You can be unhappy about it. But when you take that path of, why is this always happening to me? Why am I the one that gets this? Why am I that person? It makes it worse. It makes it so much harder to look at the fact that regardless of where you are and what's going on, you can't control things that are outside of you. You are the only thing in life that you can control. So take control of that. Take control of what you can control, and that is yourself. That's your beliefs, your view of life, and your understanding of how to move forward every day, because no matter what's going on in your life, life keeps going on without you.
That's brilliant. Thank you for that wonderful summary. Let's talk a little bit more about kindness now. I get the idea that you've done a lot of thinking about kindness, which also means that you would have had to do a bit of thinking about what it means to be unkind, or why people could be unkind. And can you offer us a little bit of, not advice, but some thoughts on why people are unkind? Is it something that the earth puts on them, or something that starts from within?
It's a bit of both, to be honest. And I
Mhm.
think that in life, one of the really interesting things is that you can have two people that experience the exact same moment in time, but they'll experience it differently because they've had different backgrounds. They've had different experiences leading up to that. And those previous experiences color everything that you experience from that moment onward. So even though, imagine, a police officer trying to solve a crime, and he's got 30 witnesses who all saw the same thing, and he's got to ask them all what they saw. He'll get 30 different versions of what went on because, as I said, everybody will experience something differently. And if we step away from that analogy, if we just look at everyday life, every interaction we have with people, everything we touch, everything we smell, it all gets processed through our bodies and is tainted. And I use that word not in a bad way, but it's tainted, it's processed with all that knowledge of everything else we've experienced before. So we'll smell something, it might not be that smell that we smelt before that was so horrific. It might smell like that, and it will bring up those emotions that we had when we smelt that horrible smell before. So it's experience plus emotion equals action or reaction. So it's when you have those experiences and emotions that cause you to act or react in a certain way that you can either be kind or unkind to somebody. And it generally comes back to your own self-preservation, your own thoughts and your own beliefs about yourself and who you are and your place in life. And if you're not happy or comfortable with who you are and your place in life at that point in time, it could be a negative action or reaction to something that you see. And the more that you can be comfortable with who you are and where you are in life, then the more your reaction or action will be kind towards others.
Yeah, how do you do that? How do you, we hear a lot, strive for acceptance, be happy within yourself. I wonder, when did that come to you?
Well, to be honest, I'm still struggling. I'm still trying to get there.
Wow.
It's one thing to have the knowledge. It's another thing to put it into practice every day. I suffered from low self-esteem for a long, long time. And I think perhaps a lot of performers do, because when I got on stage as Greg Wiggle, that was kind of my escape from me, who I was, that I wasn't necessarily happy with all aspects of me. And I could go out on stage and be this other person and get that kind of energy from people that I needed to make myself feel a bit better about who I was off stage. Now, that doesn't mean that's a good thing. You should be able to get that feeling without having to get on stage. So that's kind of where I'm at now, that, I think that was the big thing for me leaving the Wiggles back in 2006, when I left then. It was having that thing stripped from my life. How do I now, as Greg Page, step away from that and still fit into the world? Because my identity had kind of been taken away from me. So I struggled with that for a long time.
Greg, thank you so much. We've got more questions, of course, but I thought this might be a good opportunity to thank you all who've contributed to the chat. But I'm looking for your questions now, so please do use the Q&A tab. And as you can probably notice, Greg is pretty open, so I'm sure he will answer most questions. We can always try him anyway.
Well, we'll see what we get, hey?
Absolutely. I wonder, what's the hardest thing that you've had to face up about yourself?
I think the hardest thing to face up to was the fact that I had self-esteem issues.
Wow.
Because I really didn't think that I did. I knew that I did when I was younger, but not so much coming out of the Wiggles. I think that was something that I didn't realize. I think that was, I don't know whether it was naivety or just, the male bravado, just singing, no, I'm fine. But really then at some point in time, I'm just going, hang on, I shouldn't be feeling this way. And I need to be kinder to myself. I need to stop beating myself up about who I am, because I'm okay as who I am. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm a good person, and I need to let that person be seen. And I need to not worry about upsetting that person, or did I put my foot in it with that person, or could I have done that better, or what have I done wrong here? And I think some of that comes from, your upbringing as a child, and, whether you can put it down to one experience or multiple experiences that we have, whether it's at school or soccer training or music lessons or wherever it might be. Like I said before, every single experience that we have in life builds up who we are and affects our action and reaction later on in life.
That's really important. What you just said then, to be kinder to ourselves. I think that's one that a lot of people struggle with and often don't even think about. But yeah, you kind of got to let yourself off the hook before you start to turn on anything towards anyone else. So
Yeah.
that's
And
really
I
good.
think that's the thing that really took me a long time to understand. And it's that's the part that I still kind of struggle with, because you still kind of feel like you have this obligation to others, not to let them down, not to hurt them, not to do this, which is a good thing, right? We don't want to hurt other people. But sometimes when we do that and we beat ourselves up about it, it compounds the problem, because we aren't being kind to ourselves. And this is where I love looking at philosophy and also religion, because there's a lot of great teachings that cross over through religions and into philosophy and into spirituality about do unto others as you'd have them do to you. So you want to be forgiven for the things that you've done wrong. So forgive others for the things that they've done wrong as well. Don't hold a grudge, because when you hold a grudge against somebody, you're only eating yourself up. You're not really hurting them. You might let them know that you're upset with them, but really what you're doing is you're eating away at yourself. So forgive others and they'll forgive you. And forgive yourself. That's the main thing, right? If you can forgive yourself, you can look at other people with the same forgiveness. And none of us are perfect. None of us are perfect, no matter how much we want to pretend we might be or try to be or wish we were or whatever. We know that we're not. And I think as soon as we can accept that and go, you know what, I'm not perfect. I am who I am, but so is that person over there. They're not perfect. That person over there is not perfect. So they're not going to behave the way I want them to all the time. They're not going to say things the way I want them to all the time. They're going to upset me from time to time, but you know what? They're just like me, and I can forgive them for that.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you. Well, we've got a couple of questions here. Our old friend Annie has asked, thanks for your insights tonight. How do you recognize days when you are on top of your self-esteem so that you're kind to yourself and others? I mean, is it like that? Is it sort of, does it waver from day to day, or does it depend on circumstances?
Look, I would say it's probably a bit of both. I think, speaking for myself, if there's a day when I'm not feeling great about myself or just great in general, it's one of those days when I'll go up the shops and I'll just try smiling at people, because it makes me feel better. It makes me feel better to think that a smile can have an effect on somebody else. It's like what I was saying about performing with the Wiggles. It was never really about me wanting fame or adulation. It was just about wanting to be there to make other people happy. So if I can do that walking through the shops and smiling at people, then I'll do that. And I think that's a tip that I can give to people, that if you go and do that, as soon as you see somebody smile back at you, you'll start to feel better and you'll have a better day from that point on.
That's a lovely answer. Thanks a lot, Greg. And Deb is asking, on low, well, this is a little similar in a way, on low days or in your low moments, what do you do to fill your cup? You've kind of answered that already with the walking and smiling.
Yeah. Can I just add to that, though? I
Yeah.
think it's important for anyone to fill their cup. A bit of self-love, a bit of self-praise. Focus on the things that you do well, the things that you know that you're good at, the things that you believe other people would love about you, the things you love about yourself. I think that's a really good way to fill your cup. Focus on those things. And as I said, forget the crap. Forget the stuff that you would spend time beating yourself up about or wishing you had done better. That's probably the best way to fill your cup, by forgetting that stuff and focus on the good stuff.
Okay. I wonder, how would you suggest that we build a community of kind people?
Look, I think it begins from a very young age of teaching children that it's okay to be you and not worry about comparing yourself to others. I think that, as human beings, we're kind of conditioned to compete. Whether it's to get a better mark at school than somebody else, or to get a better mark than you got last time, or to do things. And, when I look at shows on TV like Survivor, those kinds of shows don't do much for that kind of belief that, we should all work together. It's all about getting ahead at other people's expense. So I believe that we need to focus on empowering people to love themselves. Once somebody loves themselves completely, that love is so easy to share with others, and that will be shown in kindness. That's what I really believe. And I think that when we look at bullies, what we tend to understand about bullies is the fact that there's generally a problem with themselves. It's not really that they've got a problem with somebody else. It's a problem within, that begins within, an unhappiness that exists for some reason. And they don't necessarily know why it is. Like I said, for me, it took me years to understand that I had low self-esteem. For people that are struggling with emotional problems, they don't understand them because they're caught up in them. They are living those emotional problems. So it's very hard to understand. So let's take those emotional problems away by saying, hey, you are okay. You are okay exactly as you are. Now, of course, we have to put into place rules and laws around things so that we don't have anarchy and chaos in society. But the more that we can have people believe that they are okay exactly as they are, forgive yourself for anything that you think you've done wrong, or that you could be better at, or whatever, then that's a way to move forward with a society of kindness.
That's great. Greg, this one's from Magdalena. I hope I haven't pronounced that incorrectly. What's the best way? This is a good question. I've got a similar one here. What's the best way to show kindness while discussing controversial topics with people who are vehemently opposed to your point of view on these issues?
Well, I think in any kind of discussion, you have to acknowledge that everybody has a right to their own view, and that's being kind, right? Yeah, to impose that your view is the right one is not being kind to the person who has a different view. So I think that's the very best way to listen, to acknowledge that there are different points of view, and I guess that's what I need to say here, that tonight, what I'm saying is just my point of view. It's not what I believe is right or wrong. It's just my own opinion after years of living on Earth and experiencing what I've experienced. But other people will have experienced different things, and their opinion will be informed by those things they have experienced. And their view that they're espousing, they're totally entitled to hold, and you've got to respect that. And I think that's where we can all learn about each other, and we can gather that knowledge, and we can collate it and take it all as one and move forward collectively with the best results.
It does feel like we're in the middle of very divisive, polarizing times. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would agree with that. And that's sad. That's one of those things where I think the more that people believe they're right than the other side, the harder it's going to be, because the fight gets tougher, because both sides believe they're right. So rather than listening, and somebody once said, you were given one mouth and two ears for a reason. You've got to listen twice as much as you talk. And that's where it becomes important in these discussions to really listen to the other side, if you want to look at it in terms of sides, the other side of the discussion, and hear what they've got to say, and hear their case. And from that, it might change your mind or your perspective, and that's how learning occurs. And I think that's really powerful. So I think these kinds of times that we're going through, it's very, it's a very powerful time, because we can take a lot of good from this, I think, moving forward.
As a former Wiggle and as a parent yourself, this is a question from Annie. What do you think we should do as parents with our young children to show how simple kindness is and how valuable it is?
Yeah, look, that's a tough one, because being a parent's a very tough job, as any parent would know. It's very hard. There's a lot of stresses and a lot of pressures put on parents. So to always respond with kindness is very hard. So I'm not going to state that anybody is going to have to be perfect. But I think what it is about accepting that children are innately good. I believe that. I believe children are innately good. They'll push the boundaries, of course, and they will try to get away with things. And it's how you respond to that. And if you can try to respond in a way that acknowledges that they're learning about life. And again, your reaction to what they do is going to build upon their what's the word I'm trying to think of? Going to build upon their schema, in I guess Freudian terms, or Piagetian
They're
terms.
sort of looking at you as a kind of role model, aren't they? They're looking
Yeah,
to you as a model.
yes, but also, because they're like a sponge, it's like if you react in a way that upsets them, they're going to remember that. Like I said before, experience plus emotion equals reaction or action. So if there's an interaction that they're uncomfortable with or about, as a child, they don't really understand the whole world and what's going on. And they don't understand that in that moment, you've got a million things going through your mind that's caused you to respond to them in that way. So they take that on board in a certain way, and that builds up their emotional profile for later on in life. So I think it's very hard. It's very, very hard. And like I say, it's one thing to have the knowledge. It's another thing to put it into practice. But I think being a parent, we have this incredible magical role to play, because we get the gift of having these people in our lives that we can play a role in shaping who they become. And that's a very, very powerful gift to have. And I think that the more that we can sort of step outside of our emotions in the way that we deal with children and their behavior sometimes, the more that we can actually embrace those emotions as we see them grow with kindness and love themselves as well.
You have spoken a lot this evening about emotion. That's not something you hear in a lot of corporate settings. And yet we are all made up of emotions.
Yeah, look, I have a belief that, a lot of people talk about mental health. I really think we should talk about emotional health, because I think that everybody has emotional problems. Everybody has emotions, and emotions make up so much of who we are. Am I back? Yes.
Oh, we seem to be back on. Yay, we're back on air. Gosh, we've only got about 2 minutes left.
Yeah, sorry. I don't know what happened there.
Must have been a bit of a storm or something. But you were talking about emotional health. So finish your point, please, because this is a really great point.
Yeah, so we all have emotions, and I think a lot of people struggle to deal with emotions from time to time. And when those emotions build up and we can't control them, that's when we become lost in so many ways, because we get our thinking, our rational, logical thinking gets clouded by our emotions, and we become our emotions. And that's not necessarily a good thing. So I really do believe that if we start talking about emotional health, we can actually deal with things a lot better, because we'll all be on a much more level playing field, because really emotions are something that's common to everybody on earth, I believe. And I think that if we acknowledge again that we struggle with emotions from time to time, that person's reacting that way because they're struggling with emotions at this point in time, then we can understand the human existence in a much better way.
Greg, that is so wonderful. I feel like my emotional health at the moment after listening to you has gone from here to here.
Oh, good.
And I thank you so much. But yeah, it's really necessary to remember that we are all emotional beings.
Yeah.
And what you see on the surface, it's kind of like the old iceberg analogy. You're just seeing this bit, and there's a whole lot more underneath.
Yeah, or it might be like looking at a car. You like the beautiful body of a car, but you don't know what's underneath the hood until you really start having a look around and getting to know it. And I think that's when you get to know people, is when you start, sharing emotions and sharing openly without fear. Actually, one quick thing, a great book I read once is called Love is Letting Go of Fear. It was written back in the 1960s, and I can't remember the author's name, but it just talks about the fact that fear is the most disabling emotion, because as soon as you're afraid of something, it's like nothing else is possible. So as soon as you can let go of fear, whether it's fear of being judged, fear of being made fun of, fear of whatever it is, then that's when you can really love, and you can love yourself and you can love others.
Well, Greg Page, it's been such a great pleasure having you on Stay Kind Conversations tonight. As I said before, I really did learn so much from this short time we've had together. I hope all of you who are tuning into the conversation got a lot from that. Thank you so much, all of you who contributed questions.
Indeed.
I didn't get around to a couple of them. There were a couple that were related to music and recording that I didn't quite understand, so I do apologize for that. But I wish all of you a wonderful festive season, and to you too, Greg. Thanks so
Thank you,
much
and you
for your
too, Jane.
time.
Thank you. Pleasure.
All right, and for all of you out there, stay connected and stay kind.
Absolutely.